Hello and welcome to Suddenly Single, the new and hilarious dating podcast.
Where we're going to get our celeb mates to tell us about their dating disasters.
We're also going to have a few experts in the studio to tell us where you and I are going wrong.
Come on, and I don't think you've got enough makeup on.
I need the sun, I need inspiration, I just want to give.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Suddenly Single. Guess who we've got this week?
Ulrika Jonsson.
Yes, I love Ulrika. She used to be a best columnist.
Yeah.
She is single again, like me. She has children again, like me. She is a mum, and she's going to talk about what it's like to be dating again in her 50s, what it's like to date much younger men, and also what it's like to be Swedish as opposed to English, because I think we're much more introverted.
Well, don't forget, she's also got to answer the Fishbowl of Truth.
I just want to give. Just want to get out of here.
Ulrika, this is our podcast called Suddenly Single, of which you, like me, have been many times.
Yes.
So, are you currently single?
Yeah. Oh, straight in there, Siobhan.
Straight in there, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I've been single effectively since I divorced my husband. So it's been nearly 6 years.
You've had some dates in that 6
I've had
years,
a
though.
lot of dates, like damagingly amounts of dates. And I had sort of one, I guess, situationship. I'm trying to use all the modern terms. Where, you know, it was something more than just sort of dates, but I don't think it was a relationship. Yeah, so I've been out of the whole relationship situationship for a long time.
So no app looking.
Oh well, I mean they are the death of romance and anything, online dating apps, and they've done a lot of.
Well, they can be depressing if you don't meet the right one, but we've got to live in hope.
Have you ever tried a dating app? Because I can imagine you're a high-profile person. You're immediately going to attract attention if your face pops up on any dating app. Do you stay away from that because of that reason, or you just don't like dating by numbers?
No, I've been on dating apps.
Really?
And in fact, it was my best friend and her girlfriend at the time who sort of put me on them while we were in lockdown, or as we had the first lockdown. She says, you're going to go crazy with 3 kids at home, 3 out of 4 at home. You need a distraction. So they set up some sort of profile. On Tinder, which I never used, but then went on Hinge. I did try the sort of celeb one, which Raya, which I thought was...
what is that like? Because I've never been accepted on that, but friends have been on it.
I mean, essentially anyone who's on there recommends anyone else. So it doesn't have to be that you are a famous person or a well-known or a recognisable face. You have people who are like, you know, head cameramen or whatever else who work in sort of the creative. But I found it... and this is obviously just my opinion, but I found that the people on there were too much up their own arses. So they were very much like a sense of their own self-importance. And besides, I actually made a decision since the beginning of time. I don't really want to date like another celebrity or whatever. I want a normal person. The last thing you want is to have somebody who's very like she la la and diva-ish or whatever else. So I it's a weird thing now thinking back on it, because when I first put my profile up, obviously it was me, and you can't pretend. I had people saying, well, why don't you just go under a different name? And I was like, well, then I'm lying from the beginning, so that's not a good start. And so, I was up there, but was always accused of like, are you a catfish? Are you a catfish? I was like, no.
That's happened to you, hasn't it? You've been thrown off several apps for impersonating
I've been blocked on a lot
yourself.
of them because they think
really?
that somebody, and people will direct you on Instagram and say, do you realise somebody is using your pictures on such and thinking, well, yeah, it's me, but then you're blocked. And it's so hard to try and get them to understand that it's you actually who you are, so you just give up.
Yeah.
Where are you at this moment in time then? Any apps, or you're just meeting people casually or organically?
I don't think I've massively ever met anyone organically in the last few years. Obviously, we had those years of lockdown, and so the chances were. And before that, after I got divorced, I just was not in the mood for a relationship. I really, which is very unusual for me because I'm a relationship person, definitely. But it just did not want that at all. And apps seem to be like a really good solution to getting to meet people. Coming into contact with a lot of people.
Breaking the ice.
Yeah, and also, unless I live out sort of in the country, I'm not going to go and sit in the pub on my own or with mates in the hope that people are going to walk in. I mean, it was different when you were younger and you did meet people in the flesh and you were 18, you went to the pub and people were there in groups and everybody knew each other, or you'd bump into people, or certainly if you go to work, but I work mostly from home as well, so the only person that's going to ask me for a date is my dog, and we've done that and that didn't work out. Apparently that's wrong. And so I've paused my dating app.
But you did say something quite positive about a year ago. You said...
That's probably dead and buried now.
Okay. No, you said, I'm in my 50s, no longer shackled by marriage or nippers, and I feel sexier than
Nippers?
ever. Nippers,
Yeah, not
babies.
knickers.
Oh, I thought you were saying knickers.
No,
no
not
longer
knickers,
shackled
no
by
knickers.
marriage and knickers.
Well, I'm not shackled by my
Nippers.
knickers either, but there are no,
But there are pluses to being in your 50s. I mean, even Malcolm is 16. That's not a baby.
no.
You don't have to worry like you do about getting to the school gates or being at the school concert or
leaving them unattended. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
huge. I mean, there are different worries with children as they grow older. Small children, small problems. Big children, big problems. But
Great.
yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, and look, enjoy.
You're in the club now.
Yeah.
But you can go out and have a date. It's about, from the little bit that we've spoken already, it's about finding the right candidate that you actually want to go on a date with.
Yeah.
Because of where you live and how you work.
Yeah.
Because I agree that, people say, God, you're on television, you're always meeting somebody, and you went to... It's like, you usually work with a cameraman and you go and do some shoots and then you come home again and you do voiceovers at home. You don't meet people unless you're on some big show.
Yeah, and certainly if you have, like you do, you have that responsibility. I mean, my dog is my responsibility in terms of domestically. I can't just disappear or take off. And I mean... A friend of mine who's been doing the dating apps probably for longer than I have, she said, Ulrika, we've got to get out more. And I said, but I can't get my head around actually going out with that sole intention of sort of meeting someone. And yet I do this thing of like, staying at home and going, when's he going to find me? But I hear what you're saying, Siobhan, being... that bit older. I mean, of course, I'm not in the sort of in a place where like I'm competing with 20 or 30-year-old women or whatever else. You are in a kind of different...
Isn't that more relaxing?
Yeah, I was going to say you're in a different league, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way. You're just in a different group of people, and there are increasingly more of us, ladies over 50, who are single and who are departing marriages and deciding that actually this isn't right for us and whatever. And I'm pretty sure the menopause is a little bit to do with that. But no, I mean, it's the first time for me of being, I started my career really, really young. I was sort of 20, 21. And then had children quite early, married, settled down. I didn't do any dating in my 20s, 30s, really 40s or anything like that. Doing it sort of now. But I have also not really known who I am away from the children, because you'll be a different person when you're with your children, and domestically you become sort of ingrained in all the stuff that's going on there. But who are you sort of away from that? And that's what's taken me a long time to sort of work out.
But also, I mean, you've been quite honest about saying when you were younger you wanted to be married and you wanted lots of children and that hope and everything. I think especially when your 30s, probably even your early 40s. And I think, I don't know, but I feel like I've really changed what I want now in my 50s.
Yes.
I actually think, if I'm really honest, and it's only been in the last year that I've admitted it even to myself, is possibly not to ever get married again.
Yeah.
But to be with somebody maybe 4 or 5 days a week would be enough. I don't know if I could ever actually... maybe 3. But
Yeah.
what I like is this thing that we discussed. That person that you pick up the phone to, that you can do nothing with, that's around, but not literally around all the time.
Yeah. Who breathes too
and-
loudly or blinks too
or
loudly.
snoring in my bed. Can we have 2 bedrooms, please?
Yeah.
If I want to go in the other bedroom, let's not have a fight over it.
What gives you the ick?
Oh, it's a really good question, because it's one of those things that you almost don't know until it happens. So you can think someone's lovely and then they can do just the one thing and it turns everything, which is so unfair. So I now have to sort of have a word with myself, like, unless they, kick a small child or an animal, try to be a bit patient.
Yeah.
But I mean, it can be...
So what has given you the ick?
I
then?
mean, things like, I guess, if people are rude to other people,
The waiters.
or if they, I don't know, this sounds terrible, but if they sort of show any signs of, not any signs of weakness, but it is weakness that I'm talking about, but I don't mean that in an emotional sense, like I like emotionally intelligent people and whatever, but if they're sort of, haven't stood up for someone or whatever else, or if you get that feeling about a person, or if they interrupt a lot, which I have a tendency to do, so it's fine for me to do, by the way. But yeah, I think it can be anything. When it comes to appearance, I've never sort of had a type, so that's why I think
On looks wise.
so that's why I think the idea of a sort of speed dating thing is would be quite good, because you just have a chat with a million different people, not a million, but lots of different people.
Yeah.
But I think if someone turned up and was a bit unhygienic that would give me the ick.
One of the things that I've very slowly come round to, because in the beginning I was absolutely not. I just don't want to. Maybe because I'm getting older myself. Would you date someone who's like 15 years younger than you or 10 years younger than you? I always used to think, no. But now I think, well,
Why would
younger men don't seem to be bothered by it at all.
No.
And actually, why not?
Yeah,
Would you
I-
date
I-
younger?
Yeah, I mean, I have to. I mean, most of the guys that I started off on the dating apps, which was a mistake because I forgot to put an age range in. So I just left it like 18 to whatever. And all these young chaps coming my way.
But that's nice, isn't it? That's reassuring in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they were all sort of late 20s, early 30s.
When you talked about Raya, you said I wouldn't necessarily want to go out with somebody that was famous or known, but you have been out with famous people previously. Do you think that was because that was just the environment that you were in at the time when you were working prolifically every single day and you were younger and you've learned from that, or is it just something that I just don't think that's for me?
I think it's a good mix of the two. I think the first point is, yes, I was working a lot, and that's sort of how you ended up coming into contact with people. But secondly, it's just been a conscious decision that, I've sort of, in many ways, taken a bit of a step back from a world of celebrity and whatever. So the whole idea of sort of suddenly, dating...
It's a lot of hassle, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a lot of hassle, and there's a lot of extra angst there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And I think... although now, of course, nowadays I don't know how much people would be interested, because everybody's interested in sort of other
What would be your
influences and
ideal
celebrities.
scenario in a relation? You would want somebody 4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah, I think this
separate
is.
bedrooms. What would you...
I mean, I think this is a really interesting point, because my therapist, she said to me years ago when I first split from my husband, she says, Ulrika, what you need to do is to go out and you need to have lots of sex and just have a good time and just do your thing, away from the children, away from the family.
you.
Yeah, and she said, there are a lot of women, sort of, I guess, our age, who are doing a thing of dating, seeing somebody a couple of times a week, doing all the best things about a relationship, which is nice dates, nice trips away, time together, doing nothing, if sitting on the sofa binge watching or whatever, but basically taking all the best aspects of a relationship, because there's no need for that domesticity anymore, because you're not, unless you're going to do children again, which I ain't. So you can take all those best bits. So that was always my driver. I always thought that that's what would be kind of ideal, doing the night, but with responsibility and exclusively. I'm not talking about playing
Exclusivity,
around with lots of different
And
people.
transparency.
Yeah, and so you're dedicated to that person, and you want to spend more time with that person.
But not too much.
But you still have your own space. And I never thought I'd be the person to say that, because I always wanted to, as soon as I sort of fell in love, I wanted to have their babies or live with them and be with them all the time. But I think that's been the surprising thing about getting older, is learning how my wants and needs have changed.
So does that mean then you've done therapy, you've successfully raised 4 children, you've had a career, got the house, got the dog. You are now happy in a situation where you don't want to live with somebody full time, but you would like somebody that's a regular companion. Not
I don't think you
separate,
can never
but-
say never.
No, but
I mean,
as a
the Thunderbolt might arrive tomorrow.
see, this is where men and women are so different, isn't it? This is what I want: separate bedroom. Well, never say never.
No, I know.
Men are so confused about what do they want me to be. Do you want me to be a
contradicting
caveman, or
myself.
do you want me to turn up with
When
some
I
flowers?
say
No,
What
you
do you
said
want?
that to me the other day. He said, what did I say? And you were like, have you just heard yourself? He said, right, I don't want this, I don't want that. Oh, that was right. He went, you want somebody who's going to throw you over their shoulder like a Viking, but don't kiss me on a first date.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Poor
yeah.
man, what's he going to know?
Yeah.
But I think that is, and you'll have to say, because I don't know how women come across, but I think
Men are in a very difficult position these days.
Do
for
you?
dating.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
absolutely.
You are. You are.
We just had a bit of a joke about that, but men don't know where they stand. It's almost like you need a little legal contract, because flirting is never an exact science, and if a man flirts a bit too cack-handed, then it comes across as oppressive.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily oppressive. I know there
That
are
might
men
not-
out there that do all this. However, men are not as emotionally intelligent as women. We've just got to get that
no,
out.
but I can, but I
We're
can
just not.
understand. I can understand as well that
So we make mistakes.
Yeah, and I can understand that where you come from when you say that, because I know, of course, we all know where lines are drawn in certain capacities and ways. But, you know, if someone wolf whistled me or whatever, I'd be chuffed as anything.
I agree.
Whereas
but that's
many
generational.
agree
That's
with that.
generational.
many young women
Yeah.
would turn around and go,
Really
"No, you
insulted.
Yeah, yeah.
don't do
Yeah.
that."
Yeah.
So I think that is a very difficult, that's a
Yeah.
difficult, very, very difficult life. Equally, if I'm on a date with somebody and I quite like them and you feel that there's a sort of, if somebody's, a bit touchy-feely, I'd like that.
Yeah.
But for somebody else, that might be too much,
Yeah.
or like, oh, you're pushing me or whatever else. So I get the impression that a lot of men don't want relationships. And I mean, I have been dating younger men. They don't want to commit. They don't have to. They can go on an app and get a hookup that night, that minute, that nobody, that they've got the world at their feet and they don't, and there is so much,
Choice.
Yes, there's too much choice.
The
And
men that
so-
you've been dating.
yeah,
or
but
you've been on
this is the
dates,
younger guys.
One of the reasons that I like you from day one, Miss Ulrika Carr, is that you are so honest about everything. Everything from your childhood in Sweden to your booze battle that you wrote, well, not battle, but that you've given up
Yeah.
booze
Have
about
you given
4
up booze?
months
Yeah.
ago in
Completely?
Best. And one thing that I think has affected my life and my relationships, being 100% honest, has been my ability to at times drink too much. Would you say that's the same with you?
Yeah, and as I wrote in my piece for Best, that it was a binge drinking problem.
Functioning binger.
Yeah, and it wasn't every day, and then it sort of almost became every day. I was drinking because I was really anxious, and I had a lot of outside, very big, what I would say, traumatic situations coming at me. But having said that, I certainly didn't need an excuse to drink. But that was, I could not cope with life. But yeah, drinking and dating, you see,
Yeah.
they go hand in hand.
They do.
Because I would always have a drink before a date because you do that to calm your nerves and get yourself into the mood. And while I'm putting my makeup on, I'll have my little rum and coke on the side there. And I have been on a date since I gave up drinking, and it was really difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
I did not want to pick up. I wasn't going to start drinking, but it was
To get
it's
yourself
such a
there.
habit. Yeah, such a habit, and it's quite triggering. And the other person's able to drink.
But there is an onus on the other person when the other person isn't drinking because I've been on dates. They go, oh, I'm not drinking. Oh, are you driving? No, I just don't drink. And you think, oh, I'm going to have to monitor what I'm drinking. 'Cause that person's going,
I don't
"Ooh,
want
a
people to
second
feel that.
drink."
Yeah. I don't want people to ever feel that. I've even had that with my son. We went out to dinner and he said, oh, do you want me not to drink, Mum? And I said, hell no. We live in the world, full of
Yeah.
alcohol. You crack on and get yourself a nice hangover tomorrow, and I won't. But, I mean, it depends why you're drinking. I think a lot of people are embracing sobriety just for health reasons. But for me, I felt like it was becoming a problem, and I didn't really recognise
How long
myself.
have you given up for?
I'll be 5 months on next week.
Oh, fantastic!
So,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Have you
not.
noticed a weight difference as well? Like,
Yeah, I've actually put on weight because
Really?
because there's so much sugar in alcohol, and suddenly you take that sugar away. So I've had to replace that with chocolate chip cookies and,
Oh God.
and stuff like that. But
The energy.
yeah, I mean, it
Better,
takes a little
clarity.
while before. Yeah, absolutely. You suddenly and just so much greater clarity about things. It's not for everyone, and I'm not here to advocate. I mean, for me, it's one day at a time. I don't sort of, you can't say it's ever going to be forever.
Do you ever envisage a scenario where you might have a glass of wine? With
Yeah, I mean, I
somebody?
do. Oh, God,
Because I can do a month and not drink, and then
Yeah.
think,
I mean,
"Ooh, but I'm
Christmas is
always-"
coming.
Yeah, so I'm quite in fear of Christmas, I think, and drinks, because we normally have a really good drinking session on Christmas Eve, which is the big Swedish day, where we're doing shots
Really?
and stuff. Me and my son and family. Yeah, so that I don't know how that's going to pan out for me, but I'll be. Oh, there's plenty. I mean, look, I think that it's one of these things that it's become quite fashionable to give up alcohol, which I think is a great thing because it's nothing bad in giving it up. But some people just give it up.
You don't want to nail yourself to a cross just in case you want to have a
No,
glass.
I mean,
but you've done 5 months. It could be 10 months.
Yeah, exactly. And but I went for a Sunday roast a couple of weeks ago, and everyone's sitting there with a glass of red wine, and I was like, I could just do
It's
that.
just getting over that bit, though, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but
'Cause by
then
the time
once
you
you're
get
over
home-
that, once you're over that, you're sort of fine. But day to day, I don't think about it anymore. But it used to be, I used to think of it as a reward, or if I was anxious about something or going somewhere unknown or with people I didn't know, I'd want to have
Are
a
you
drink.
an anxious person, though?
I didn't think that I was, but again, I think it's a little mixture of sort of hormones, and maybe if you're not putting yourself out there a lot, and then sometimes I guess, well, and also alcohol exacerbates that anxiety, so it's absolutely brilliant for calming you down for a few seconds, but then the next day you're
Even more anxious.
But you see, I was very like, I mean, I was never, on the floor in a pool of sick or anything like that. Everything is just like, I never got to the point where I was being, making myself unwell, apart from unwell in the head and whatever.
I mean, the other thing that you've been very honest about, and I don't know if you even remember when we talked about it, is the fact that you were born in Sweden with a very unusual upbringing. Your mum left at 8 years old, and you were brought up by your dad. And the conversation that we were having was that actually Sweden is very open and honest about everything. You discuss everything. And Brits are quite uptight on the whole. And maybe if they're feeling things and they don't say it, you've always been very body confident as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, it changes with age a little bit, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, your body is what it is. But growing up in Sweden, I certainly, on billboards, as news presenters or whatever else, you saw mature women all the time. You saw women of all sizes on advertisements and things like that. So I never thought that was like unnatural, or that at that point in my life, because I came to England when I was 12, so that was probably a little bit more formative, moving on from the age of 12. But I never saw that I had to necessarily conform to anything at that sort of young age. I mean, again, when you're a
Conform
teen,
to what?
well, conform to they weren't just beautiful women on billboards, or newsreaders were over 60 and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't just, you know, about youth and perfect shape and whatever. So I sort of always had a huge admiration for older women. And often when I'd go around to my friends' houses, I'd go and stand and talk to their mums in the kitchen. I just thought older women were more interesting.
Joan Collins said something that I thought was great. She said, if you're born beautiful, it's the same as being born rich, but you lose money every year. That there's an extra pressure that goes on as time
Right.
goes on. And you are still very attractive and obviously can pull much younger men. But is there is there a pressure to that you're, a sexual person that people would celebrate? Because, you know, I remember Shooting Stars and Ulrika, you know, that your name became synonymous with a certain type of beauty as well. Have I made that clear?
No, I mean, I think it also is really difficult when you're answering that yourself, because like we always look at ourselves or view ourselves differently maybe to other people. So when I have people saying, oh, I used to watch you on this, that, the other, and I go, I was just doing a job, or I didn't think about what I looked like. And I think actually I took, like I think most people still do, youth for granted. I didn't think about aging. Why would I have to think about aging? Even though I loved older women and loved, you know, had huge amounts of respect for them, I didn't think about how am I going to feel about aging. I always thought I'd be really cool with it. But then you start to look in the mirror and you go, it takes an extra half an hour to get your makeup on, or you can't. Well, I do. I tend to not wear makeup at all. I've made a real effort for you this morning.
No, but it's the Pamela Anderson is coming in.
Yeah,
the no
absolutely.
makeup
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that I've definitely felt, you know, that with age, I guess there was greater value to me when I was younger, if that's sort of where you go.
I just feel, is there a pressure to keep up that particular look now? Because that's what people would perceive you as. Even for me, you know, I was on telly when I was in 15 doing shows, and I did certain campaigns and stuff, and people go, "Oh my God, you've changed." I think, yeah, because it was like 35 years
so
ago.
what are they expecting?
Yeah, exactly.
What are they expecting?
But there's almost a pressure put on you from somebody else because that's their perception.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that's the case for you.
I mean, I would try to sort of bat that way, and I sort of live in a community where they all just, you know, see me at the supermarket and nobody cares at all. But I think there's a small amount of pressure on myself in respect of, you know, because when I look back at pictures of myself and I think, gosh, you know, you ain't looking like that anymore, you know, and but I can't. My argument then is, but I can't help. This is what's happening to me is natural, and whilst there are things I could get help with, it's like, at what point do I stop that then?
Now we have a relationship expert, Michelle, who's fantastic with some curveball suggestions, usually for us too.
Because
Feel free to ask her anything that you would like to.
I just wanna get out of here.
We've now got Michelle Ellman with us, author and relationship expert. So before I bring you in, Michelle, I just want to ask Ulrika a question that we didn't talk about earlier that I think you'll probably be able to comment on. How well do you get on, particularly with the dads of your children? Because obviously, to a certain extent, you need to have a relationship with them in a way that you don't necessarily with the men that you didn't have a family with. Do you get on quite well with? I mean, and John, I think you do, don't you? He's the father of your oldest, Cameron.
Well, I mean, I don't really. I mean, of the three dads that are around, you know, two of the children are adults now, so there is no need for us to have communication. But there's no sort of there's no atmosphere or anything. But I deal with my most recent ex-husband. He lives just across the road, and.
Well, it's easy for Malcolm to cross the road.
And we could communicate perfectly civilly. Obviously, you know,
So if there's a family emergency, you can text any of them.
100%.
And
He'd help you.
Yeah, if there's anything sort of going on. But I've always worked really hard at maintaining that. That's always been really important for the sake of the children, regardless of what I feel about my exes. I have always maintained that that's the right way for them to. They don't need to.
And as a public person, there's an appetite to know the details of everything about your relationships. And I'm sure there must be times when you have to step back from it all and say, well, the children don't need to know this. And we can sort that out.
And that's also changed over the years, because when they were younger, I was able to write and say more or less anything. Now, of course, you can't take a photo and put it on Instagram without them going, don't post that. You know, they don't want to read about certain things. But it's been part of what I do. I mean, as a writer, is to write about those kind of situations. Yeah. And I've had to say to my children at times, like, you're just going to have to suck it up, because this is what I do. And I think also a lot of the things that I write about, I think, are important, either whether it's about, you know, trying to stay friends while you're after divorce, or, you know, when you've got to deal with
And it's life, isn't it? These things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is the other thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, as they get older, it's just don't read it then. If it makes you that uncomfortable, don't read it.
Well, no, and don't come asking me for money, because that's how I made my money. If you don't like my filthy money, go away.
Michelle, you were listening in on Ulrika chatting about dating and various different things. What's your take on it? Because you're at the other end of the dating spectrum of a young person that's never been married or has kids yet.
Yeah.
Have you got sympathy or respect for older people dating? Because there's a lot more to navigate when you're older.
Charming.
You know what? It's not even an age
isn't it?
thing. I have respect for anyone who's had their heart broken and tries again. Like, I think it's really hard thing to do.
Have you had your heart broken, Ulrika?
Yeah, in not by any dates. Oh, there was one guy, he didn't break my heart, but he broke my hope. So that's how I read it, because he was really like full on for a
high rise, high fall.
Yeah, short time at the beginning, and then suddenly I could sense like cold feet. So he gave me that feeling of like, oh, I could really, this could maybe be something. This is whatever, and it also made me realise that that's what I wanted. That I wanted some kind of a relationship situation, and then he pulled away straight away. And
there's a term for that, love bombing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he was classic, that, and that really, and it shook me. And I cried a lot. And I'm not a crier.
Because you mourn something that could have been.
Well,
and
I felt an idiot as well. Yeah.
Are you an idiot, though?
No, you're not, because you're basing it on what somebody said.
Yeah.
But you just feel like,
You famously...
You're not an idiot. And also, I think it's important to say that your heartbreak doesn't always correlate to your most serious or your longest term relationship. Sometimes if a relationship ends with a lot of confusion, for example, the chapter isn't really closed in your mind. And so it's a lot harder to let go or have closure.
I've had people in the past where they're living rent-free in my head for a long period after, and I'm thinking, you were not that important to me. And actually, you were a dick, and the red flags were there from the beginning.
Yes.
Why are you still in my head? And that's he obviously, whatever they triggered certain things, and that I hadn't sort of resolved, I guess, then. And I still want to say to them, like, and followed by, I punch, I don't advocate violence, but, you know,
but I think it's one of those things that I always say, no matter why you feel that way or why that person matters more than the other person, it doesn't matter. It just matters you feel that way, and that's valid. But I think sometimes we feel like a shame around, oh, but they're only in my life for 2 months, so why do I care so much? And actually, you care because you care. That's all that matters. Like, it hurts because it hurts. That's all that matters. And how you feel is valid. Well, the breaking of hope in general is usually a breaking of the fantasy, the potential future you could have together. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that's because you have fantasized and gone further a few steps ahead than you
as
actually
women.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's
a
where it's really important to stay rooted in the reality in the present.
But I sometimes, because it's interesting, because I'm acutely aware that I do that. But sometimes I don't call it fantasizing. I call it trying to...
Manifesting?
Well, no, not even that. Trying to imagine that person in a scenario with me,
Yeah.
so that I can see
Men
whether
do
that
that.
fits.
Men do
Like,
that.
you know, can I imagine Tim coming over on Christmas Day and fitting in with the family? No, that's a fantasy. No, I'm joking.
so
but you know,
the issue
do you know
is-
what I mean? It's like
Am I wearing clothes
I
on
do.
that
Depends.
naked with a cracker on you.
It's a mistletoe. Put the
Issue with
heating on.
that. So the reason why that doesn't work is because when you... So let's say you're...
So should I stop doing that?
Yes, because you're getting the physical emotion
Yes, I mean,
for something
that
that hasn't
event.
existed. And the reason why that exists is because your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined.
It's also what you say to me quite often. Why are you at checkmate? Well, he's just asking for a drink.
Yeah.
And that's because I do that too. I this particular guy, the night that I
Can
met
you
him,
visualise? It's about
I
visualising.
actually looked at him and I thought I could marry you. And then he started speaking, and he was exactly the type of person that I liked. But there was nothing about him I didn't like. But as you say, he's buying me a drink.
Yeah.
I'm getting my dress.
Yeah.
I mean,
So the
and yes,
thing-
right. It's not real. It's not real.
It's a little bit psycho.
I also...
Thank you.
A little bit psycho.
Can I do the flip side of that then? So you're actually in a relationship. When do you know when it's time to get out? Because you had an 8-year relationship with your husband, didn't you?
Oh no, we were together for much longer than that. It feels like 300 years. You don't just wake up one morning and go, oh,
Yeah.
I want a divorce. It's something that builds over time. You sort of almost make notes of, not make note, but mentally in your head you have
check
certain
out a bit
things.
more and
Yeah,
a bit more.
and I worked really hard for a number of years to try and access certain bits in our relationship that didn't exist and try to understand through him what was going wrong or why it wasn't there. And I never, ever got anywhere. And then on our 10th wedding anniversary, I very sweetly took him to therapy for counselling for our marriage going. But I had checked out by then, but I felt like I really deserved to throw everything at this. And if there is some sort of, maybe there's something I've missed. Let's bring a neutral person in here. So, but
also-
anyway, there was
Remember
nothing I'd missed.
also
If you're
10
talking about the
years
same
in-
person, you publicly had said that you hadn't had sex for
Yeah.
a number of years.
Yeah.
And you could read that statement in a lot of different ways, but also you'd stay together to try and make it work. Obviously, there had
Yeah.
been something that you were trying to make it work. Because I think that's what men miss, is a woman that's actually maintaining and trying to keep something alive.
Yeah.
Because a lot of women don't want to do that now.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm bitter about with myself is the fact that I wish I'd sort of done it sooner, because I feel like I wasted a few years there.
Hindsight's
But I
20/20.
don't have that. I don't walk around with that as a burden or as a chip on my shoulder, because what happened at the right time. There were children involved. I guess I was wanting to wait for them, and I was not. I needed to be so sure.
So
Everybody
let's
shut
bring
up.
in the Goldfish Bowl of Truth for our last question.
Oh my God.
Just wanna give. Just wanna get out of here.
Mine is, what is the best lesson that you have learned from a split?
To split.
You were right.
Mine's a bit of a weird one, but from my last split, I actually was getting really ill in the last 2 years of the relationship, like headaches non-stop. And I had no clues, no signs that anything was going on. But what I found out later was he was cheating on me. And I think my body knew, because I was getting so ill and I was going to neurosurgeons, everything, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And they were like, oh, it's just
a dirty cheating bloke.
the day he left, I've not had a headache in a year. Like, well, it's been less than a year, but
Good
like,
riddance.
No headaches.
I do
if
think
you're
your
man-free.
unconscious mind knows this stuff
my
before
guess.
you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sure there's, yeah. Here we go.
Okay.
Final question, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think life will be like when your youngest child leaves home?
Fantastic.
No, you don't even
No,
mean that. You've just made
I
that.
absolutely
You love
don't
your
mean
kids.
that.
You
I
just
yeah, no, I absolutely don't mean that. And actually, when my first left home to go to uni, I went into mourning for 3 months, and I couldn't go in his room. I was really deeply sad. And when it's time for my girls to leave, you're a little bit more used to it and you accept it. But when the youngest leaves, who just happens to be a boy, because at the moment we've just changed arrangements, so he's with me a week and he's not with me a week. And when he's not with me for a week, I really miss him. And actually, when the last child leaves, that is it. I haven't, I guess there's going to be more dogs, or I'll foster children or something.
Yeah.
But it's a
I
very,
thought about fostering.
It's a reality. Like that I've been able to push away for a while. But yeah, definitely it's something that I'm very good on my own. I love my own time and my own space. But that's very different from it being forced upon you because your children have left. So no, it's going to be bloody
How
awful.
about you?
Well, she's never allowed to leave, is she?
No, you know me well, Ulrika. No, she did leave for 3 years. I was distraught. She's now home with her boyfriend. They can live with me forever if they want
I
to.
know. I used to say that to my elders.
See, I'm like that as well, actually. Well, 6-year-olds, there's a pretty good chance that they probably will still be here when I'm dying upstairs going...
Yeah. Don't worry. Yeah, they'll unplug your breathing apparatus. Just
You'll
put their
never be
chargers
lonely.
in.
Dignitas.
You'll never be lonely.
Well, Ulrika, Michelle, thank you so much for coming in. I think we've learnt a lot, actually, today.
Oh, it's been
Yes.
fab. We
Yeah.
could have talked for hours.
Yeah. Just wanna get out of here. Woke up
So
feeling
next week,
good.
we're joined by Sasha, straight out of Married at First Sight on Suddenly Single.
And we'll be finding out what went on behind the scenes and who Sasha will be spending Christmas with